In the midst of the valleys of Tyrol, surrounded by mountains that seem carved by ancient gods, there still exists a tradition that whispers secrets into the ear of the curious traveler. In certain villages, when a woman offers an apple to a man, a perfectly red, fragrant apple without a single word exchanged, she is not merely sharing a piece of fruit, she is issuing an invitation, not to dinner, not to conversation, but to something more primitive and delicate, courtship without words, silent desire. This gesture, which has survived the passage of centuries, does not appear in any tourist guide, yet it lives on, passed down from mothers to daughters. At certain rural festivals, especially during the autumn, when the harvests are ripe and the air grows colder, young Tyrolean women stroll through the markets with baskets of apples. Some give them away, others sell them. But an apple handed over directly, without any other purchase involved, can be a clear symbol to those who know how to read the language of suggestion. It is not a vulgar gesture, it is elegant, enigmatic. A tradition that blends the sweetness of the forbidden fruit with the ancestral coquettishness of those who seduce without raising their voice. And although today many do it for fun or as part of local culture, there was a time when that apple defined the beginning of a union or of a night without promises. Austria, with its air of decadent nobility, has always been a land of contrasts, of Baroque castles where waltzes were danced and hidden taverns where lovers' secrets were whispered, of rigid monarchies and hidden freedoms, of silent monks and courtesans who used fans to speak in code. Here, desire has learned to disguise itself in formal attire and perfect phrases. Indeed, in this country where music seems to float on the air, with composers like Mozart, Strauss and Schubert whispering forever from Vienna's walls, everything becomes more intense, more intimate. The sound of a violin can be as suggestive as a glance, and a stroll through the gardens of Schönbrunn can ignite the imagination far more than a nightclub anywhere else in the world. Austria does not need to show skin to provoke. Its eroticism lies in rhythm, in gestures, in the way coffee is served on fine porcelain, in the manner a woman adjusts her hat before a mirror, in masked balls where no one is who they appear to be, in operas where the drama of forbidden love is an evening routine, in wooden cabins where the fire crackles and blankets invite you to draw closer. But let us return to the countryside. For far from Vienna, in the mountains where the cold forces one to seek human warmth, courtship remains alive in forms that feel plucked from another era. In some villages, love festivals are still celebrated during the month of September. There, men arrive with hand-picked bundles of wildflowers. Women receive them or decline them with a tilt of the body or a barely drawn smile. It is a wordless language, yet one with centuries of history. And although many of these rituals now serve as folkloric celebrations for tourists, on the fringes there remain authentic glances. Couples who meet amidst traditional dances, who exchange phone numbers in the local dialect, and who promise one another coffee, or a walk through the woods, or something more. In Austria, the body insinuates itself discreetly. It suggests, lets itself be glimpsed. Women dress in traditional dirndls that, though modest, enhance the silhouette with provocative elegance. The low neckline is part of the tradition, but also a tool of seduction. Everything is measured, calculated. There is no vulgarity, there is playful artifice, and men, for their part, have learned to read these codes. They do not interrupt with clumsy words. They do not rush, they wait, they observe. And when they dare to approach, they do so with a mixture of inherited timidity and pride, born of centuries of aristocratic courtesy. Because in Austria, even desire is expressed politely. But that does not mean it is any less passionate. It simply burns within, without need for public display. In the universities of Salzburg, in the cafes of Innsbruck, on the ski slopes of St. Anton, the game of seduction remains alive, but silent and refined. A subtle art, the art of those who do not need to say everything out loud for the other to understand. Perhaps that is why Austria remains so mysterious, because its pleasures are not at the fingertips of those who seek them desperately. They reveal themselves only to those who know how to wait, to those who observe, to those who understand that sometimes an apple is not just fruit, but a secret wrapped in autumn perfume, waiting to be bitten. Walking through Vienna, especially when the sun begins to sink behind the Baroque rooftops, feels like stepping into an ancient poem. The lampposts cast soft shadows on gilded facades, the cafes fill with low conversations and glasses of white wine, and an elegant aroma of contained desire drifts through the air. Vienna is the city of music, yes, but also the city of silent lovers. Because in Austria, and especially in its capital, love is not scandalous. It is not shouted in the streets, not flaunted with excess. Here, romance is an art, one that is inherited, studied, and perfected. It is like a waltz. Every step has its rhythm, every glance its moment. Unlike other European cities where physical contact comes swiftly, in Vienna, everything begins with the eyes. Two people meet on a tram. They do not speak, but they study each other. Later, they run into each other in a bookstore, perhaps at the philosophy section. There, one of them dares to comment on a line by Nietzsche or a poem by Rilke. The conversation flows like a slow yet deep river. And if souls recognize each other, perhaps they arrange to meet afterward in a discreet cafe at a table for two beside a window overlooking the Ringstrasse. Many relationships begin in these cafes. These temples of Viennese thought are more than mere coffee houses. They are stages, time is taken. A mélange, a typical coffee with milk, is shared while watching passers-by. People talk about art, politics, music, and if chemistry arises, it is not from a clever remark. It is from the subtle connection that grows like a cello melody. In Austria, desire is not effervescent. It is dense. It simmers slowly. And when it finally reveals itself, it does so with a disarming intensity. In Vienna's historic districts, many couples walk hand in hand without a word. They do not need to speak. A simple walk suffices. A glance at a violin shop window, a pause before a building where Klimt or Freud once lived. The entire city becomes complicit in love. If there is a season that ignites Austrian senses, it is autumn. The air cools, leaves turn golden, and cafes brim with cinnamon-scented pastries. At this time, couples seek refuge indoors. Desire intensifies. Country inns beckon for weekend getaways. Many seize the chance to disconnect from digital noise and reconnect through small gestures, a caress, a whisper, a candle-lit dinner. Yet, modern Austria also knows contrasts. In university towns like Graz or Linz, younger generations blend tradition with a touch of rebellion. Here, the young still value silence and courtesy, but also experiment with new ways of loving. Alternative art festivals are held where bodies become canvases and touch is part of the piece. In some circles, ancient Celtic winter rituals are revived, dancing nude under the moon, surrounded by fire. Not a mass custom, of course, but it exists and reminds us that beneath the veneer of perfect civilization, Austria still harbors untamed passions. At grand balls, one can witness sensuality at its most elegant. The Viennese ball season, which begins each January, unfolds as a display of silent seduction. Women in long gowns and silk gloves move with feline gazes. Men in tuxedos, stiff at first, tremble when the waltz draws them into a perfect spiral. Every turn, every pause, every brush of hands is a wordless conversation. Some dances still follow ancient rules. One may not invite another to dance again until the piece ends. During those minutes, the pair belongs to each other, even if they have never met before. Beneath that apparent rigidity lies an often misunderstood sensual freedom. It is not debauchery, but depth. The understanding that the body can express far more than language. That a hand on the waist during a slow measure can be more powerful than a poem. That a stolen kiss after the last waltz can mark a person forever. For those seeking a more intense experience, there are discreet venues where eroticism is explored without judgment. Austria has a long history of elegant brothels, where seduction was as important as the act itself. Today, some exclusive clubs in Vienna and Salzburg preserve that spirit. Places without shouting or neon lights, but with candles, classical music and clear guidelines. Where conversation, respect and atmosphere are valued. Where encounters are consensual, desired and free from pressure. These hidden spaces are hard to find but retain the essence of erotic play as an art form. And intriguingly, there are still whispered tales of certain alpine estates where Austrian and foreign couples gather for sensory rituals under the snow. Not orgies or spectacles, but ceremonies of wine, massage, silence, and breath, where the body is worshipped as a temple, where everything is consent and everything is mystery. The most fascinating thing about Austria is that none of this is displayed openly. No flaunting, no need to announce whom one loves or how many liaisons one had the night before. Here the intimate is guarded like a treasure. The sensual is veiled, because Austrian culture understands that desire does not need explanation. It only needs to be felt. That is why Austria seduces in such a singular way, because it does not give everything at once. It compels one to look closely, to wait, to decipher the codes. And when one finally enters its universe, one realizes they have been entranced since the first measure of a waltz, since the first cup of coffee, since that red apple offered without words. Austria is a jewel carved in ice, harboring a flame within, and whoever learns how to melt it will never forget. It is not merely a nation refined by symphonies drifting through its streets. Above all, it is a land of mountains, of forests stretching to the horizon, of silent valleys where echoes carry untold stories. It is in these majestic landscapes that the true character of its people is forged, and where desire assumes its most primal instinctive forms. To understand Austrian sensuality in its most natural state, one must venture into the Alps. There, among snow-capped peaks and crystalline streams, inhabitants live differently. Life is austere, closely tied to the rhythms of climate and Earth's cycles. Yet paradoxically, it is here that the most genuine, profound forms of intimacy arise. Many Austrians believe that the forest has a soul, a living entity that watches, protects, but also punishes if disrespected. From this belief spring dozens of tales, myths, and small customs that endure to this day. In some parts of Tyrol and Carinthia, a small rye loaf or a sip of homemade liqueur is still left at old trees as an offering to the Waldgeister, the spirits of the woods. Those who practice this do so not from superstition but from respect, for they have learned that amid snow and silence, everything draws closer to the sacred. Yet not all is spiritual. There is also a natural eroticism that emanates from these landscapes. In hidden villages, with no cinemas or night bars, human connections form with the body present, with direct eye contact, with accidental brushes along a narrow mountain path. Hiking not only strengthens the body but sparks chemistry. And it is in wood-heated mountain refuges, warmed by old stoves, where the most sincere kisses often find their space to be born. In summer, during alpine festivals, this discreet sensuality transforms into an open celebration. One of the best known is the Almabtrieb, when the cattle descend from the high pastures adorned with flowers and bells, in a procession filled with music, beer, and traditional costumes. Here, the energy shifts. The men wear tightly fitted lederhosen, the women display dirndls with generous necklines, and the atmosphere becomes dense, charged, almost electric. It is not uncommon that at nightfall, among folk songs and dances under lit tents, fleeting encounters take place, not necessarily planned, not necessarily committed, but always intense. Tradition does not contradict desire. On the contrary, it sustains it. Because in alpine culture, virility and femininity are celebrated openly, albeit with a clear code of respect. Among young people, there are ancient games still practiced, such as the Kranzelstechen, in which the boys on horseback must spear a floral wreath suspended in the air to earn a kiss from the chosen girl. Others prefer the more subtle Hut aufsetzen, in which a man places his hat on a woman's head during the dance, indicating that he has chosen her to share the rest of the evening. These are gestures that seem plucked from another era, yet they retain a powerful symbolic charge. In winter, the setting transforms. Snow covers the paths, nights grow long, and houses become refuges of warmth. Saunas, present in many rural homes and hotels, become temples of well-being and of intimate encounters. In Austria, as in Finland, nudity in these spaces is not taboo. Men and women share the steam with natural ease. It is not about provocation, but about cleansing body and soul. Yet sometimes that barrier-free physical contact awakens unforeseen emotions. There are couples who recount having begun their stories in a sauna without saying a single word, only feeling the shared heat, the steam on their pores, their accelerated breathing. And in the most exclusive mountain lodgings, private sauna sessions for couples are offered, complete with candles, essential oils, aphrodisiac infusions, and views of the snow-covered forest. Here, nature is not merely observed, it merges with desire. There are also dark legends, such as that of the wild man who inhabits Austrian forests and who, according to tales, appears to solitary women to seduce them and then vanishes among the trees. Although feared, he also possesses an enigmatically attractive side. In some villages, small theatrical performances are staged, where young people dress as this mythological being and chase maidens during celebrations. It is a game that blends the ancestral with the sensual, the feared with the desired. Austria also guards esoteric traditions related to sexuality. Some older women, known as Krauterhexen, herb witches, prepare ointments and potions with alpine plants to strengthen love, attract fertility, or revive passion. Although many regard these practices as mere folklore, there are still those who seek out these healers when their relationships grow cold or their desires lie dormant. The ancient knowledge, passed from grandmother to granddaughter, preserves formulas that use lavender, rosemary, nettle, and even bee venom. These practices are not advertised in brochures. They are hidden, protected like all that is precious, and yet they exist. Sometimes in a glass vial of oil that smells of forest, or in an infusion offered to the visitor with a look that speaks more than any explanation. Austria, in the end, is a country that whispers. It never shouts. It does not need to, because it knows the true mystery lies in what is left unsaid, in the desire that arises to the rhythm of the wind among the trees, in the silence shared with another body while everything outside is covered in white. In the fruit offered without words, in the mountain that guards secrets, and in the forest that never stops watching. Austria is a country that has learned to listen to time. It does not chase it, it lets it pass, and perhaps for that reason it has managed to remain faithful to its essence, even in an era when globalization seems to devour traditions. Here the old is not seen as obsolete, it is revered, it is preserved, and it is lived. Nowhere is this more evident than in the monasteries scattered across the country. From Melk, with its majestic Baroque abbey suspended above the Danube, to the small convents lost in the Styrian forests, these retreats not only bear witness to spiritual silence, but also to contained desire. Because, contradictory though it may seem, where there is repression, fantasy blooms. Many of these monasteries open their doors to guests seeking retreat, rest, or meditation. But behind the walls, gilded by centuries of history, things happen that are not always written in brochures. There are stories, never confirmed but always whispered, of visitors who find more than peace. They find companionship, they encounter others who, under the guise of withdrawal, seek a deeper connection. It is not about scandal or sin, it is about humanity. A solitary woman arriving for a spiritual retreat may be observed by a young silent monk, or perhaps by another guest equally quiet. Complicity grows among prayers, slow walks through the gardens, fleeting glances during the dinner served with homemade bread and sweet wine. And when night falls, beneath the stone roof and walls covered with ancient frescoes, desire emerges more strongly than ever. Because in Austria, the forbidden has never been completely repressed. It simply hides better. Meanwhile, in the cities, especially Vienna and Graz, the 21st century advances. But it advances with style. The average Austrian is highly educated, reserved, and not given to emotional displays. Yet in private, they are extremely passionate. This duality has shaped a very particular love life, where dating apps coexist with formal balls, and where open relationships in certain circles are not scandalous but simply agreed upon with elegance. In high-speed Wi-Fi cafes, one can see young people swiping through potential lovers' profiles on their phones. But instead of a simple hello, many start conversations with literary, musical, or even philosophical references. In Austria, intellect is aphrodisiac. Women look for men who can speak to them of Mahler or of the latest exhibition at the Leopold Museum. And men, in turn, are captivated by women who know the rules of protocol and can break them when no one is watching. In university settings, especially among international students, sensuality flows freely but without ostentation. Clandestine dinners are organized where the dress code is symbolic nudity, not necessarily physical, but emotional. Everyone arrives with something to tell and something to hide. And throughout the night, amid glasses of natural wine and marzipan desserts, confessions, exchanges, and games emerge. There are no rigid rules, only one mandate: honesty and enjoyment. One of the elements that most characterizes love in Austria is the notion of tact. Here, caresses are not invasive. They are given softly, respectfully, but also with an intensity that disarms. A mere brush of the hand can mean more than a speech. And many Austrian couples prefer comfortable silences to forced conversations, because they know desire grows in the space between words. As for marriages, there remains a deep respect for tradition. Austrian weddings, especially in rural regions, are deeply symbolic spectacles. They are celebrated in castles, ancient churches, or farms converted into ballrooms. But beyond the ceremony, there is one custom that surprises visitors: the Brautentführung, or bride kidnapping. In this tradition, the groom's friends steal the bride during the festivities and take her to a nearby tavern, where the groom must find her and buy a round of drinks to win her back. In some old versions of the custom, if the groom takes too long, a guest could declare his intentions to her. A mixture of play and provocation that, although today just a jest, has deeply seductive roots. In the border regions where Austria meets Slovenia, Hungary, or Italy, cultural fusion has produced even more diverse ways of experiencing love. Austrian women from these areas are known for their strong character and direct gaze. They are not afraid to start a conversation or to show interest, but they do so with elegant firmness, never losing their mystery. Rural cabins, especially in the Alps, are also spaces where couples reconnect. Many boutique hotels in these areas offer special packages for lovers: outdoor jacuzzis with mountain views, candle-lit dinners in the middle of the forest, and sensory rituals that combine massages with traditional techniques. This is not sexual tourism, but experiences designed to awaken a profound connection between bodies. Austria has also begun experimenting with so-called adults-only hotels, located in mountainous regions and designed exclusively for couples seeking total privacy. In these places, every detail is conceived for pleasure: hanging beds, glass ceilings for stargazing, aphrodisiac oils made with local herbs, and even rooms inspired by classic tales with a sensual twist. The aesthetic may be Baroque palace-like or alpine cabin-like, but the goal is the same: arouse without offending, excite without losing elegance. Emotional education is also integral to the Austrian system. In many secondary schools, values such as consent, respect, and effective communication are taught, and this is reflected in how young people relate to one another. There is no hurry, no pressure. There is an authentic search for connection, pleasure, and shared beauty. Austria is, without a doubt, a country where past and present embrace with passion, where sensuality is not shouted but felt on every corner, where an offered apple can be as powerful as a poem, where snow covers rooftops but does not chill the soul, where gestures still speak louder than words. Austria is not a land of excesses or ostentation, and yet it is profoundly passionate. But its passion is expressed like everything else in this nation, with control, with form, with aesthetics. Here, desire does not spread in shouts or crude displays, but hides in the folds of everyday life, like a subtle perfume that only some can perceive. The Austrian soul is shaped by the symmetry of Baroque art, by music that still floats in every corner of Vienna, by respect for silence, for spaces, for gestures. In this country, bodies are not given over by impulse. They are offered with elegance, like an opera piece rehearsed 100 times before taking the stage, and yet, beneath that polished perfection lies a deep, almost raw intensity. Austria has been the cradle of great minds obsessed with the psychology of desire: Freud, Klimt, Schiele, all Austrians. All obsessed with what is left unsaid, with what hides beneath the skin, with the blurred lines between art, sex, death, and the soul. In the rooms of the Leopold Museum, for example, Egon Schieler's paintings still unsettle more than one visitor. Twisted bodies, wide-open gazes, explicit eroticism without filters. Schieler was once accused of obscenity, yet today his works are national treasures. Because Austria understands that desire, when expressed with intelligence and beauty, is also culture. That bond between art and sensuality is breathed in the streets, in sculptures hidden in royal gardens, in church frescoes that mix the celestial with the human, in concerts where musicians close their eyes as if caressing each note, and even in bakeries where an Apfelstrudel is served warm with cream, almost like a caress melting in the mouth. Even in markets like Vienna's Naschmarkt, there is an implicit sensuality. Fresh fruits, spices, cheeses, bread, but also gestures. The vendor winking at the tourist, the woman gently stroking a gleaming eggplant. Body language seeps in among purchases, prices, and footsteps. Austria is also a country that values mystery. Privacy is almost a sacred right. It is uncommon for people to speak loudly on public transport. It is not customary to share personal life with strangers, but that does not mean nothing happens. On the contrary, everything happens, but in silence. With codes one must learn, with gestures one must know how to read. Austrian women in particular master this art with finesse. They may seem distant at first, but every movement is deliberate. From how they tie their scarf to how they cross their legs or pour their wine. Everything communicates something, and sometimes that something is an invitation disguised as courtesy, or a promise locked inside a sigh. The apple, in this context, is more than a fruit. It is symbol, it is insinuation, it is a game, it is the remembrance of an era when words were superfluous and gestures said it all. In some villages, the act of offering an apple to one's desired partner is still celebrated in festivals. And although today it is done as a folkloric tradition, the look with which it is given still says the same. Austria, after all, is not a country to be conquered. It is a country to be discovered. Like those women who do not yield to the first compliment, but who, if one knows how to wait, eventually reveal an inner world as beautiful as their alpine landscapes. And that is what makes this place so irresistible. Because here, love is not begged, it is earned, step by step, waltz after waltz, apple after apple.